This is a metaphor for your business's journey. Sometimes it feels like the course keeps changing right before your eyes. And in order to maneuver it, you need an expert by your side. That's what Dell Technologies advisors do. They have the Windows PC and tech solutions you need to help you get out in front and stay ahead of the game. Call an advisor today at 877-ASK-DELL. That's 877-ASK-DELL. A start to a simpler experience with Windows 11 Pro.
All right. Hey, BA fam. It's Mandy. I'm back with another very special guest with Brown Ambition today. We have the amazing, incredible, intelligent, charismatic, snowboarding, podcasting, writing, TED Talking queen, Jodi Ann. Jodi Ann is, as I just said, there's not enough hyphens for Jodi Ann, but where I discovered Jodi Ann was through her incredible TED Talk, which you can check out. We'll put a link in the show notes, called The Myth of Bringing Your Full Authentic Self to Work. And through her work, Jodi Ann says she is on a mission to disrupt business as usual to achieve social change. And she's doing that in a couple of different ways, and especially in the way that she's approached her career. So we're going to talk to Jodi Ann about the TED Talk, about the myth of Black women bringing their full authentic self to work. Also her podcast. She has an amazing podcast called Black Cancer, which we're going to talk about, where she explores the lives of people of color through their cancer journeys. I cannot wait to get into this conversation. So without further ado, hello, Jodi Ann. Thanks for joining BA.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. That was the best introduction ever.
Oh, you're welcome. I want women, and you know what? I used to do it off air on my own, but then I was like, I know it's uncomfortable to hear your own bio, but I'm like, here, listen to your bio, listen to what you have done. So for those in the BA fam who may not be aware of your work, where did you get your start in your career, and how did you end up on that TED Talk stage? Walk me through it.
So in 1986 now.
When two people love each other a lot.
Exactly. Oh gosh. There are two ways to think about this, right? Normally I would say, I'm a classic millennial and that I'm like on my 6th or 7th career at this point, right? Mm. And then the other side of the coin is what happens to your career path when you graduate college with this promise of, if you go to a fancy school, you get a fancy job and live a fancy life. In 2008, in the Great Recession, what happens to your career path when you're just trying to make do? And then what also happens to your career path when you're a Black woman in predominantly white spaces, trying to carve out space for how you work, right? Your authenticity, your values, your ambitions. And so I think on that second half of it, between the recession and what is it like to navigate work as a Black woman, you'll see people changing jobs every couple of years or changing industries every couple of years. And so I think that this path of the topic of my TED Talk, authenticity, that I've kind of always been on that path in some shape or form, trying to understand who I am in these spaces, who I am as a person who was born in Jamaica but moved to the US within my first year of life, navigating those two cultures within Blackness, navigating what it's like to try to succeed and understand yourself in the context of predominantly white institutions and predominantly white workspaces. I've always been trying to understand what is truly my authentic core and what have I had to adapt as part of who I am in the process of code switching for, now 20 plus years of my life, right? Mm. And so I think I've always kind of been building through my own experiences, personally, my professional path, and just my scholarship of kind of authenticity in these types of contentious environments, or environments that have high stakes, because who you are in your authenticity with your friendships isn't tied to your livelihood or your health insurance. Right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of risk in that space. So I think I've always been building content wise. But as far as the TED stage, And I know you talked about the podcast, and to make that linkage here, 4 years ago around this time, I had my surgery. I'm sure we'll get more into that. But as a part of going through that process of the pre-diagnosis depression that I was experiencing, the post-diagnosis depression I was experiencing, just like how traumatic that health crisis was when you're in a situation when you have to really grapple with your own mortality, there was a period of time that I couldn't see myself in the future. Like I really just like, all right, let's just make it through the end of today. Maybe we make it tomorrow. But I really could not see or imagine my life beyond like the immediate crisis that I was in. And so the moment that I had the thought that, oh, I'm going to apply for TEDx Seattle became the moment where I'm like, wait, are you seeing yourself in the future?
Yeah.
Do you see a vision? Do you see a path for, your life, what you can contribute? And I think most critically, what I want to leave behind. What do I have to say that can outlast me and kind of reach way beyond I could in my little corner of the world? And so that's kind of how I got to the TED stage, like both content-wise, life experience-wise, but also what makes you take that leap was this desire to leave something behind, which is interesting because in the TED, thank you. It's interesting because you think about leaving things behind, but I don't think I really fully grappled with or thought of what being on the TED stage would create ahead for me. I will say taking that TED stage during the pandemic, it was in 2020, has radically transformed the trajectory of my life, just objectively. But also, as I was trying to grapple with like who I was with this, like planning for my life, like why it was so critical for me to even start having the thought of TED. Once you reach, and I'm sure you've experienced this, but I don't want to project, but you get this public sense of who you are, who you are on social media, who you are on the TED stage, what people think about you kind of through these mediated platforms, and then who you actually are. And so what also happened post TED is a splitting or a fracturing of kind of how I saw myself, which has also been interesting to grapple with these versions of myself and not thinking too much about a core authenticity, but multiple authenticities, like multiple parts of who I am, and investing in these different compartments of my identity, my work, and my passions.
And that it's almost liberating too. And I think your work in general, your TED Talk and speaking about our authentic self, it's liberating when we sort of allow ourselves to have multiple selves and to say that's okay. I think code switching has a certain connotation that we are not being authentic, or that we are, and in some ways maybe we're not, but it's healthy, I think, to have boundaries and to compartmentalize a little bit the way that you associate in certain contexts, in certain places. It's just human nature in that way. And, I think it's also the kind of journey that you can say if you feel like this or not, but that you're never going to arrive to a place where you're like, oh, and this is it. I can define myself today. Because isn't it always changing? We're not meant to figure it out and have a period at the end of it, I feel like.
I do. You are always changing. Like your story is always being written, but I do think as a result of my experience, I've been kind of terming this for myself as an edited life. So what happens to you when you have nothing, right? What happens to you when you are in a massive crisis and your kind of mental budget, body energy budget has to really only go to a couple of line items, right? Like I got to do with survival. I got to do with bills. I have to do with family relationships, and that's all I can hold. And so what I found in my experience, and I often look back to this, who was I in that moment of crisis? And thinking about those as essential components of who I am, because then I actually see those elements in all these different versions of myself. So when I had nothing, when I thought I was going to die, I was very communicative. I leveraged my team, right? My families, my friends, my coworkers. I asked for help, right? And I was very kind of, and not prioritizing this as a virtue, but I was very clear about decisions that I needed to make. And even though I did have these massive emotional moments, my central core was like, what is the project here? What are the things we need to do? Like, I was very organized. And so who I am at work, who I am with my friends, all of that, those kind of essential components are always there. And so when people say to me, you're this strong, independent Black woman who likes to do everything herself, we say this to us all the time. I actually know foundationally that I am not that, right? Because when I had nothing, I asked for help. And so it's not difficult for me to ask for help, nor do I think I'm someone who only asks for help when I'm at a moment of desperation. But I think there are certain conditions of being like perpetually disappointed by people, mostly in a professional setting, where you do feel like you have to advocate for yourself. You do feel like you have to kind of manage things on your own. That doesn't mean that's who I am. That's who I have to be in this space. That doesn't mean I'm lying, but that's, I think, to your point around code switching by extension, is like, this is my response to this particular environment. I'm not lying to myself, but this is kind of like the armor or the costume, as I speak about in the TED Talk, that I put on. It doesn't change who I am, but this is what I need to survive. But I know when I take that jacket off, that this is the essential core of my authenticity. And I think having had that experience, I feel much more grounded in who I am. And so I can withstand kind of these external messaging through the world, the culture, my former employers, because I'm free now. So
yes,
my former employers, or even family or friends who want to project ideas or demand a part of me that I'm like, that's not even who I am.
Well, let's talk about your career, because let's establish, how did you begin your career professionally? What kind of work were you doing? And where did you get to be to a place where you are writing and speaking about these issues in the workplace for women of color?
So when I was an undergrad, I was really being groomed for the academy, right? Like, I wanted my PhD. I would tell people that my kids would be calling me Dr. Mom because I would be busting my ass on this dissertation, right? And like, that's kind of how I was groomed, because the vision that I had for my life, I really took to Melissa Harris Perry. I just wanted to be someone who could speak and write about interesting topics that mattered to me. And I loved research. I loved reading. And so kind of going through the academy was my path to that. Then something happened senior year, and I'm like, I just kind of want to work first, because to do this, I'd have to go to school right away. And so by the time I made that decision to work first, I didn't really fully grapple what was happening with the recession. And so that was kind of a huge wrench thrown in the plan. And I tried to approximate like teaching. And then I was like, oh, I'll work in the charter school system, which is a whole other conversation of why we allow inexperienced people to experiment on Black and brown children with educating them. But I digress. Yeah. So with
Teach for America.
Yeah. Teach for America.
It's fine. So you started teaching. What did you study and what was your undergrad?
I did communications. So I did media studies and mostly focused on gender,
race. So we're both like journalism-ish grads in the Great Recession. And look at us.
Look at us now. We always find our way back.
Communicating.
Exactly.
Using those degrees.
And so I worked in a charter school for a bit. Then worked as a personal trainer full-time for 2 years. Got my master's degree in public health at the University of Michigan. Then I worked in the global health space for almost 5 years. And so during that time when I was doing global health is when I had my spinal tumor and surgery and all of that, which radically creates a sense of urgency to stop the bullshit and and do what you want to do. I did a detour into the startup world for a year, worked at REI for a few months before the pandemic hit. And the pandemic hitting really put into focus that it was time. It was just time for me to do what I wanted to do. And so the way I started the pandemic was to look at my finances, see how much runway I had between savings, severance, and gave myself 6 months to literally do whatever. I just wanted to wake up every day and just do what I wanted to do. So I was working on a book proposal. I started doing Eventbrite events, doing virtual events, and was preparing for the TED stage. And all of that just kind of kept snowballing into more and more and more. And so I'm in a really good spot now where I can continue to do foundationally what I set out to do, which is to wake up every single morning and I get to determine how I spend my time, what I get to work on, and what I want to create for myself and for my community.
I love that. It's funny though, because I was just on a coach. I do career coaching as part of my business, and just on a call with a woman who's been in the same role not the same role, but with the company for 26 years, trying to convince her to take 6 months off. And I'm like, wow, you got there. You got there when I think a lot of us should be getting there way, way, way before, you give a quarter century someplace. So let's talk about your health scare, not even a health scare, your traumatic health event. What happened? How old were you? Because I mean, I can't even fathom you were probably in your mid-20s.
No, I was 32 when I got diagnosed.
32? Early 30? Yeah. Okay, so tell us, so talk about this experience and how did that sort of change your outlook on your career and everything?
Yeah, so I think I've been struggling with different health ailments, very benign, like, my elbow hurts, my wrist, like very, very tiny, tiny things, for about 3 years. And so that took me in and out of different doctors' offices, doing MRIs and x-rays and trying braces and exercises and creams. And the work of that is mentally exhausting, physically exhausting, and it's expensive, right? The first MRI that I had cost $400. And I have health insurance, okay? So it's like, it was a lot. And I was getting very tired of that, especially in a lot of these in and out of new doctors' offices, being met with racism and different bias, which shows up as, are you really in a lot of pain? I had one doctor tell me that a lot of what I was experiencing was a result of having a sedentary lifestyle. And I'm like, well, how do you know that? Because I snowboard, I surf, I run, I lift weights. I was on a competitive dragon boating team. Like,
of course you were
super active, right? And so,
yeah. You're a personal trainer, you said?
Yes, I was a personal trainer. And so he's looking at me like, oh, why didn't you tell me? Well, why did you assume, looking at me, at I don't know if it was color of my skin, shape of my body, that you assumed that I was sitting at home watching TV all day? Which is also fine for people who do that. I'm not trying to judge on people's lifestyles, right? And so just kind of deal with like the back and forth of that, and it was just draining. But
all even though you're in pain and not knowing why.
In incredible pain. I cannot describe like the level of pain, but you're just like, it's whatever, you push through, you go to work. I still did all my physical activities and I was hurting the whole time, which is a whole other thing of why do we normalize being in pain? Like that wasn't okay. Mm-hmm. And so at some point I was describing all of this to my sister and she just interrupted me and she's like, Jo, you are not Serena Williams. And I'm like, first of all, you don't have to come for me like that. I know that. I know that I'm not Serena Williams. Like, what is your point here? But the point she was making was that I'm just a regular active person. You know, Serena Williams is an elite athlete, right? So being a regular active person should not create the amount of ailments that I was having, right? That the fact that I was in pain was not normal or should be warranted for the types of activities that I was doing. Because again, it's not like I'm doing a lot, but I'm not an elite level, competitive, greatest in the world athlete. And so that kind of snapped to me that this is actually not okay. And so I kind of grit down, bared it. I gave myself 4 months to do every single test that they could do, unrelenting, right? That I would just give myself that amount to really do the investigative work, which is itself a massive privilege to be able to take the time off, to be able to have the health insurance or the finances to cover that, or even the mental capacity to like invest in your health and in yourself that way. And so I was like, I have all these things lined up for me. I'm just going to commit for the next couple of months to figure it out. Literally the next test that I did, which was an MRI of my cervical spine, found a massive tumor inside of my spinal cord. So the way it was explained to me was if I did nothing, I would be completely paralyzed from the neck down in a year. So I should have surgery and should have it within the week, which I pushed back because I was already scheduled to go snowboarding in Europe. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to Europe first and then I'll be back after that.
Wait. You were snowboarding, surfing, all this stuff, and you had a massive spinal tumor.
Massive. Doing
nothing would have made you paralyzed. And you said, I hear you, but the flight is booked and the hotel is non-refundable. So BRB? What was going through your mind? You didn't tell your mom, did you?
No, are you kidding?
My mom never would have let I was going to say mama never knew that you were getting on that flight with a spinal tumor.
No, that was not information we were sharing with the public.
Oh my God.
So this is what was going through my head. Okay. Because he told me that the surgery itself carried the same risks, right? That the surgery itself could paralyze me. If
was anyone with you when you were getting this news? I can't imagine.
No. So I'm like, okay, if that's what I'm facing, if I'm facing potential complete paralysis from the neck down this week, I'm going to Europe, right? Because it could be the last time I was ever able to travel independently or to snowboard and to like have that experience. I didn't know what was ahead of me. And so I start bargaining. I'm like, can I push it back a month? And he's like, you have a ticking time bomb in your neck. I cannot make you better than you are from when you go into surgery. And so you could be compromising, the best thing that you have going for you right now, which is the fact that you're healthy, right? Like you have a lot of mobility. He actually said to me that when he saw my scans, he didn't expect someone who could walk to come into his office. Like that's where we were. And so after the deliberation, I was like, I have to go to Europe. Like I have to do this trip. Like this could be my last opportunity for anything like this. And so kind of went through that whole process. Had the surgery, had a lot of rehab.
Wait, so you go to Europe. So how long was it? Had an amazing trip, I hope.
It was phenomenal.
Okay.
It was the best snowboarding of my life.
the powder was fresh. I don't know snowboarding technology, terminology, but there was snow and you boarded it. Okay.
There was snow and I boarded it.
Yes.
It was great. I cried for a lot of it, just trying to like really take it in.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't know if I could die. Surgeries are serious, right? I didn't know if I would be paralyzed. I didn't know anything. My family and I, my sisters in the military, they planned that if I ended up severely like paralyzed, that she would adopt me as her child so I can get health insurance through the military and I wouldn't have to bankrupt my entire family for the rest of my life. So there were a lot of what ifs ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And I just needed to focus on there now. I'm going to Europe. I'm going to have surgery. We'll see what happens after that. So I think when I came back to work from that, and one thing at the intersections with work here that I want to emphasize is that when you have a health crisis or someone in your household or someone that you take care of has a major health crisis, you have to decide what is likely an inevitability that you have to tell somebody at work. And not all workplaces know how to handle the real humanness that comes with when a health crisis is in play. Whatever meetings I had, whatever deadlines I was working on did not matter as soon as I got that news. And thankfully, where I was working at the time, they're like, you do what you have to do. All the paperwork, all the PTO, all the disability, whatever, we will handle that on the back end. I did not have to worry about anything when it came to my job. In fact, after surgery, I was on disability leave for 4 months. And they created a policy at my organization. This is a very small organization, nonprofit. So I don't even know if those large companies do this. But they created a policy where you could donate your PTO to someone else. And so in the creation of that policy, I was able to extend my leave an additional month because I was still, I couldn't even type after surgery, right? I had to relearn how to do everything, that I could extend my leave and still get my full paycheck. And so
that's phenomenal.
It was probably the greatest gift to not have to worry about my livelihood, how I was going to be paying for all these bills, what I would have to do work-wise. They took every single thing off my plate. Not everybody has that experience. I think, just to land the plane here, but after going through that experience, it became very clear to me that difference between like how different my experience could have been if I was working somewhere else. And so that division of what is me and what is this organization, what is the environment, what is the individual, and what is the institution, right? So that became super clear for me. But also, and I've talked to a lot of people on the podcast who go through this, but the capacity for bullshit is like almost eliminated after you go through something like that. And so my decision making after that was very clear, right? I had a job that I loved. It was absolute nonsense to me and I quit, right? I wanted to kind of create my life in this way. I'm not hand wringing and like, I don't know, what should I do? Should I do this? Maybe I can wait. No, wait for what? And so I still live my life that way with people who want to plan stuff for me like months in advance. Or, I've had people ask me like, oh, what are you working on? Or what goals do you have? And I tell them the same thing. I'm like, I don't plan my life more than 2 weeks out, right? Like because you don't know. And I think that kind of trauma response also gives me a sense of urgency and a way where I don't negotiate with what keeps me healthy, what keeps me sane, and what keeps me happy. Like that's non-negotiable. Yeah. And so I always try to take care of myself first.
Clarity. Claire, I mean, it was
Yes.
trauma, but it was like the positive, the silver lining is that fast track to clarity, fast track to being unbothered,
Oh, yeah.
being focused and understanding what's important. You know, when you say you get stripped down to like family, your health, you know, what's in front of you, nothing else matters. And I don't want obviously not everyone needs a spinal tumor. I swear to God,
No,
don't let it be
this.
a spinal tumor. The client that I was talking to this morning, when I tell you, and it's so serendipitous that I'm sitting with you now because I think back to I hate the word client, it makes it sound so transactional, but this woman who's been working with me for a couple of months now, and I looked at her and I was like, you realize I need you to act more like your house is on fire right now. Like you're having an emergency, we need to call 911. And the response is quit. The response is it's time for you to walk away and take 6 months off. And it was like she was waiting for something big enough, the catastrophe, the tumor on a scan, you know what I mean? And the fact that and it's really difficult to kind of get people to a place where they can see their own health and their own well-being as that emergency. Like it actually is in jeopardy. Wow. People don't always realize that physical symptoms like headaches, teeth grinding, and even digestive issues can be indicators of stress. And let's not forget about doom scrolling, sleeping too little, sleeping too much, undereating, and overeating. Stress shows up in all kinds of ways. And in a world that's telling you to do more, sleep less, and grind all the time, here's your reminder, BA fam, to take care of yourself, do less, and maybe try some therapy. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can get matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. Give it a try and see if online therapy can help lower your stress. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Brown Ambition listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/brownambition. That's BetterHelp.com/brownambition. Avast One's award-winning antivirus software stops viruses and malware from harming your devices. Data breach monitoring enables you to find out if your online accounts have been compromised and whether your passwords need to be changed. Their firewall protection keeps personal information secure and prevents attacks. With Avast One, you can confidently take control of your online world without worrying about viruses, phishing attacks, ransomware, hacking attempts, and other cyber crimes. Learn more about Avast One at avast.com. So the surgery, the physical rehabilitation, how long did all of that take? You said it was 4 months of recovery, 5 months? Relearning how to type?
Of not working. I was in the hospital for about a month, and that's like, can you walk? Can you write? Can you pick up a really small thing and put it to the other side of the table? The experience when I was in hospital was traumatizing and very, very isolating. And this is pre-COVID, right? So I had people visiting me every day, but it's really challenging. And I remember this one instance where they took me to the bottom of a staircase, and she was like, all right, for PT today, we're going to walk up the stairs. And I was so irritated because I'm like, I'm at Memorial Sloan Kettering. Like, this is like the creme de la creme of cancer centers in the world. And what we're doing today is walking up these dingy back staircase. Like, give me the bells and whistles. Like, I want cool equipment and, windows.
You were wondering where the dragon boat was?
Yes. I'm like, come on. And then, so I'm all high and mighty off myself. Like, this is what we're doing. Like, we're walking upstairs. And I stood at the bottom of the stairs and I just kind of looked up and I started crying. Because what's interesting about a spinal cord injury is that there's nothing physically wrong with my muscles, my legs, like my body functions. The problem is that the brain cannot get the information to the rest of the body. And so when people use paralysis as a figurative sense of speech, I'm like, you have no idea what that experience is like to be at the bottom of a staircase, looking at it, wanting to walk up, but your body is not moving. And having to constantly send those signals over and over and over again and hope that one of them gets through and your leg moves, right? Which I think actually sounds like what you're talking about with your client, where you're like, you keep sending these signals like, girl, quit your job, right? Like, do something different, take some time off. And the signals are not getting through. And so you keep sending them and hoping that like you can take the step. So I think I understand why people use it, figuratively, but the actual work of kind of navigating through partial paralysis is, I guess it's humbling.
I can't even fathom what that, but thank you for even taking the time to try to express that for those of us who haven't felt that way. Man.
I just wish that people wouldn't have to go through stuff like that to get that kick in the butt.
Yeah.
To just create the life that you want to create. Life is so fragile.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't walk away even from the pandemic from that, like I don't want people to have to go through a crisis to start investing in themselves and to spend their intellectual energy, as we talk about our professional lives, through something that like really matters to you, but also is getting you kind of what you want out of that realm of your life. And so I'm not saying that everyone has to do meaningful work. You can make widgets. If those widgets give you, generational financial safety and that's important to you and that's your goal, then great, right? But are you destroying yourself regardless of what path you choose in that process? Like, are you unhappy? And so I just want people to tap into like what actually matters to you, what's actually important to you. How can you achieve your goals without eroding yourself?
I could not agree more. I think some people do need the big seismic shock of an event. I'm with you. I'm like, if the pandemic didn't do it, then what the heck will? I mean, but some people are really hard-headed and not, people will learn on their own time. But I do feel like younger generations, and I will include ourselves in that. I'm a millennial. And I think that we understand the urgency of protecting happiness and well-being. And what I feel like the shift that I'm seeing is we are collectively using our voices and even people like you going on stages and talking about the importance of us telling that and holding employers accountable and companies and businesses accountable for breaking down their problems, breaking down their systems and processes to better accommodate our new perspectives and our, what we value the most, which is love, family, wellness. Why is it not okay for me as a mom, a Black woman, a mom, a working person? I'll put myself out there and say that I judged my own mom when she would tell me, I just want to be a mom. I don't want to work. I just want to be a mom. I had to work because I had 4 kids and, was by myself. And I'd be like, you just wanted to be a mom? But like, that isn't.
Which is huge job.
It's a huge job. And it's also, but I felt I'm glad I got over this really quickly, but it was like, I had this perception that like, there was a glamorization of work and working and being a part of a company and doing the 9 to 5 and that, the traditional image of the working woman through the 80s. I think we were I'm an 80s baby and you kind of see the women and you have to like act like the man and be aggressive with your career, but at what cost? So we're almost like we're the next level of that. It's yes, we can have careers, but we can have it on our own terms. And we don't have to sacrifice our financial well-being to have a job. We shouldn't have to sacrifice our financial well-being to have work that is meaningful, that treats us well, takes care of us, and lets us clock out when we want to clock out and spend time with the kids and have time for ourselves and all that beauty. So for you and I, the way that we got there was being our own boss. And I want to talk to you about that transition for a lot of women. it is, I'm so happy that they can find places in traditional, 9 to 5 work where they are able to do that. Feel safe, be well paid. It exists, y'all who are listening. It exists. I help people all the time. It does. But in this particular chapter in your life, you are on your own. So how has that been, that transition into independence, and how's it going?
It's going great. I mean, to put it in context, like if I didn't want to do anything revenue generating for the rest of this calendar year, I do not have to do that. And I think that's what Ali Wong, some extent to what Ali Wong refers to as like fuck you money, where you're just like, I'm good. Like I don't have to do anything. Like but I didn't expect this for myself at all. And I feel like I had a non-traditional approach even to entrepreneurship. I have tried the like forecasting and here are all my marketing strategies and this and that, but it's so not me. And so not what I had the energy for, where I'm just like, I just want to do what I want to do. And so the strategy is to work as authentically as I can and as publicly as I can. And so when I started in 2020, I wanted to have like conversations about microaggressions in the workplace. But again, I wanted the audience to be us. And so it was like a workshop for women of color. We're going to talk about microaggressions, kind of what the experiences are. And I was just trying to figure out like what in that topic I actually cared about. And so I just started doing it. It wasn't perfect, right? It was probably at 70%, which is my rule. Like if it's 70% good, if it's 70% there, it's enough, right? Which itself, I think also for Black women is like, wait, is it not perfect?
Yeah. No, but I love that. Done is better than perfect sometimes. You're
exactly. And I was like, I'm going to learn publicly, which we don't often feel like we get a chance to do. And people create situations where we don't get a chance to do that, right? So I was like, I'm going to learn publicly. This is a low stakes situation. I'm just going to just put this stuff up on the internet. I had no audience really before this and just started doing them very regularly. And from that, built this huge audience. Like I would have 3,000 people on a waiting list. And so kind of building off of that and kind of crafting like, okay, what in this do I care about? What else do I care about? I started the Black Cancer podcast, which is not revenue generating at all. And important for me to kind of keep that as a passion project. And I just started kind of doing. What I didn't expect is that people who showed up in these places, in my workshops, workplaces, right?
They
like,
sure do.
I didn't plan this. And so they're like, hey, can you do this for us? And can you do that? And I'm like, wait, what? And so in the beginning of that, I had no idea what to charge. I was just kind of, I don't know, making things up, talking to people. I will say this, I would never charge somebody now, what I accepted 2 years ago. Like, I'm like,
as you shouldn't.
Exactly.
As you shouldn't. The price has gone up and it's gone up and
listen,
that's okay.
Yesterday's price is not today's price. I'm telling you.
Period. Paragraph. Say less. Mm-hmm.
And so that just really built up. And then some writing opportunities came up and the TED Talk went out. And those two things really took off, which created the audience, which generated the work, and which has led to other opportunities that will be public soon that I can't talk about yet. But I just allowed myself to really just stay focused on the things that I cared about and the things I had energy for. Now, what that came with is saying no to clients who would not pay me what I asked for. And this is when I was not even charging that much. Saying no to people that I felt bad vibes from. Like there's a CEO of a big company here in Seattle who made a comment about my hair in a Zoom meeting. And I'm like, yeah, this is not the match. And said no to thousands of dollars because I didn't like the interaction. And so I always try to center on what's giving me energy, what's taking away my energy. And as much as I can, make decisions about what's giving me energy. What's also critical to this too is that I never wanted to make decisions based on money, because if it was about the money, then I could go work for somebody else, right? The whole point of working for myself was to give, myself the level of agency to structure my day the way I wanted, and to do the types of things that I could get excited about, and to work with the type of people that I want to work with. And so I love saying no to people, and I've turned down a lot of people. And that's been an important part of my process. So the last thing I'll say too is that because I work in what I'll call like such a self-centering way, I have never pitched work to anybody. I've not done a proposal. I've not done the RFPs. I've not emailed people cold with a deck or anything. I work publicly, and I make sure that my website is up to date and people know how to find me. And so all of my business is inbound, and I love that because it changes the power dynamic. I'm actually deciding whether I want to work with you instead of the other way around. And that level of power is a level of power I've never experienced in my career before. And, spinal cord injury aside, I've never been as mentally or physically healthy than I've ever been. And that's the point,
So you can snowboard whenever the damn hell you want to snowboard.
Every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday. Where do you live?
I live in Seattle. I snowboard at Stevens, for people who know. It's like an hour and a half away from here.
Okay.
I snowboard on Wednesdays, so there are no crowds. I do not take business meetings before 1 p.m. with rare exception like this podcast.
I was going to say, what time is it over there?
I know, girl. When your team was like 9 o'clock, I was like, 9 o'clock? I'm still doing yoga at 9. I have a 3-hour morning routine.
I'm walking in the park at 9, so I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, so I have a 3-hour morning routine, and most of my work day yesterday, I ran 11 miles, right? So that's the type of lifestyle that I want, and to be able to have that type of lifestyle and also be financially healthy is something that I did not think would be possible. It's the thing that you hope for, but I mean, I'm very happy right now.
I am so happy talking to you, because for anyone who's listening, I'm just going to sum up a couple of things that I'm hearing. I'm hearing, one, it is possible. Like you are. This is when we glamorize Black women grinding and hustle culture and all of that, but we need more examples. And I'm so glad that you share yourself with us, because we need more examples of this, more women doing whatever the hell they want to do and showing that, yeah, my bills are paid and I'm doing what I want to do. So now what? And on top of that, what you said, that I work so hard. I have a group coaching program. And one of my favorite things to talk about is one of the scariest for the women that I work with, which is your brand. It is you, and it's using your voice and standing in your point of view and speaking and sharing and showing people what it is that you're doing, and not being afraid of that, not being afraid of creating your own platform and sharing, and how much power there is when you tell people. As soon as I started actually opening my mouth a lot more and sharing my opinions, your audience will find you, and those opportunities, baby. When you said all those inbound requests, yes, that will happen in your career. Even if you're 9 to 5, it'll be recruiters reaching out. It'll be hiring managers. If you don't open the front door and, say, come on in, how are they going to know that you're there? And I think that's I'm so happy and to hear you say that there is power in you being more public, with the work that you're doing, and not waiting around for the permission. And I wish we had more time to talk more. From one entrepreneur to another, I see you on so many levels, and thank goodness that you're healthy and that you made it through the other side of that. I'm so grateful. And I'm grateful to you for taking that experience and not letting it, if anything, letting it turbocharge you forward, because your work is so important. And I'm so honored that you have shared your time and your voice at this early Friday hour with our audience. I know that they will feel seen in your work. So if you guys want to learn more about Jodi Ann, check out her website. We'll have a link to the notes. Check her out on IG. Jodi Ann, is the website the best place for people to find out more about your work? That's jodiannbury.com.
Yep, jodiannbury.com and Jodi Ann Bury on Instagram. Jodi Ann _B on Twitter, but I never do anything on Twitter, so that won't be a exciting place for you.
Samesies. Are you doing any TikTok dances? No.
No, I asked my niece to teach me a TikTok dance, and she looked at me and was like, "Auntie, no."
You know what's great about you don't have to learn how to do dances. Just be yourself. People, they love authenticity. Authenticity wins.
Well, I will say this. I heard this for like to support entrepreneurs, like pick 2 social media platforms and like double down. And so I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn are my primary one. So y'all can find me there.
I love that. Yes, just focus. Just pick one and focus. People are always like, it's so overwhelming. Well, don't let it be. Thank you so much, Jodi Ann, for joining Brown Ambition. We will have links to all of your incredible work in the show notes. And I cannot wait to see where you go next, my friend, my new friend in my head.
Thank you. No, the friendship is here. You heard it here first.